tanks going around shooting each other. You may have that too, but ultimately that won't matter. And we really, when I was doing Tucker Carlson the other night, we were talking about it. And great guy. He's a great guy, and he's made a really good show. We talked a lot about it, and he said, that's right. What's worse than this can take place in seconds. This isn't in 300 years from now. And the radical left now likes talking about it, and they should talk about it. And other countries know exactly what I'm talking about, and they've been
Hello,
getting rid of a
welcome.
lot of
This is
it.
a
They've
free
put them
mock
into
test for PTE.
their nuclear
Let's see
weapons.
how
They have
much
to
I
do
will
it.
got the marks
It's
in
a
it.
level of
I
danger
will
that the
try.
world has never seen before,
Let's see.
and
Let's go.
people don't talk about it. Do you think that based off your relationship with
One
Putin,
of the
you could
great
convince him to
one
withdraw
of the
from
great
Ukraine?
contributing
He would
factors
have
to
never
mental
gone into
illness is
such a
the
big
idea
war
that we
if he
should
was
at all
always
costs and at all
he's in love
times
with
be well.
Ukraine. He
We
considers
suffer
it
far
part
more than we should because of
of
how long
Russia.
it can take many of us until we allow
But
ourselves to fall properly and useful
there's
ill.
zero chance he would have went to
One
war.
of the great contributing factors
So
to
I could
mental
have
illness is the
military
idea that we
Olympics if
should
you
at
can't have a
all costs
pipeline. He was
and
okay with
at
that.
all
And then
times
Biden
be
came in
well.
and approved the pipeline. So
We suffer
what was
far
he up to?
more
You
than
never
we
heard of
should.
what you do until they came building a pipeline to Germany and over
One of
here.
the great
And I
contributing
said to
factors
Germany,
to
why would you
mental
do this?
illness
If
is
you
the
really
idea
had
that we
nuclear
should
weapons,
at all
Russia,
costs and at all
why
times be
gave you
well.
the
We
Ukraine?
suffer far more
Why
than we
flattened you
should
surrender?
because of
Because
how long
that's what
it
you
can
need.
take
They
many of
surrendered.
us
They won't
until
give
we
the
allow
center of their
ourselves to fall
energy to
properly
Russia.
and useful ill.
Wars with over many years, but they
Movies
fought
are
many
an
wars.
integral part of us.
And
They
I said,
mirror
you can't
what
do
we
that.
believe and how we
No,
coexist as
I'm
people.
going
It
to
is easier
tell
to
you
see our
that I
concerns
believe without
or
question,
attitudes,
because of the
flaws, and
power of
strengths
weaponry,
and strengths
is
and
we use it
strengths
of
in films
destruction
than
in
it
power.
is to
And you multiply
decipher
that
them
power
from our daily
times
interactions.
500.
When
It
our
doesn't
prevalent beliefs and
understand what the
ideologies are
suffering that you
challenged
have.
in
A
films, we
revolution
are
that doesn't
sometimes
mean
able
you're
to
incapable of
interrogate
autonomy.
ourselves and embrace change.
They don't get it. We have incompetent leaders. This would never happen. All of the things that we have,
Movies are an
like
integral
destruction
part of us. They mirror what we
many
believe and how we
violent
coexist as people.
and
It is easier
energy,
to see our concerns,
natural
attitudes,
gas, all
flaws, and
natural
strengths
gas
in film
development
than
is
it is to
strategic. They're
decipher
fighting to
them from our
defend
daily
strategic
interactions.
reserve
When
sites.
our prevalent beliefs and ideologies are challenged in films,
You
we
would
are
blow
sometimes able
yourself
to
away.
interrogate ourselves
To
and
get
embrace
people's
change.
gasoline prices down so they look at good in
For
an
two
election.
summers in
And
Pioneer
he did
Mountains,
that.
the roar of rushing white water
So many things have been
filled the air, but where the loud sounds
strategic.
prevailed, only gentle streams
Psychological.
flowed by. These phantom rivers were part of an experiment led by ecologist Dylan. He and colleagues were testing a hypothesis that the sounds of nature influence where animals live and how they forage. For two summers in Pioneer Mountains, the roar of rushing white water filled the air, but where the loud sounds prevailed, only gentle streams followed by. These phantom rivers were part of an experiment led by ecologist Dylan. He and colleagues were testing a hypothesis that the sounds of nature, influence where animals live and how they forage. Most societies throughout history employed some strategies to help people in poverty meet basic needs. Before the 20th century, religious groups and private charities often led such initiatives. Today, these are called welfare programs and they usually take the form of government provided
Something in the
subsidies for
general
housing and health care.
populace. You want to have figures nobody ever heard of before. We've become somewhat of a third world country. Our election's a third world. I'm sorry to tell you that. We had our friend Steve on the last podcast, and he
Most
canceled the
societies
meeting.
throughout history
He
employed
can't
some
he
strategies to
can't
help people in poverty meet basic needs. Before the 20th century, religious groups and private charities often led such initiatives. Today, these are called welfare programs and they usually take the form of government provided subsidies for housing and health care.
years ago after former leaders, so they can't come back. I had people investigating me
Physics, physicists,
over things like
physics,
Marxist hoax. We had
physicists
a
who
DA who
physicists thought they
campaigned
had a
and
solid
he
grasp on
campaigned on
what
higher
made
Bill
up matter.
Gates.
They knew the atom contained
They
electrons
investigated
surrounding
things
a
that
positively
my
charged nucleus.
groups did.
They also knew that each nucleus contained a number of protons and positively charged particles. Combination of those two particles made up all of the matter in the universe.
because it's called election interference. They see it.
Physicists thought they had a solid grasp on what made up matter. They knew that atoms contain electrons surrounding a positively charged nucleus. They also knew that each nucleus contained a number of protons and positively charged particles. Combinations of those two particles made up all of the matter in the universe.
You wouldn't be canceled. But if I was doing badly in the polls,
Female
the
hummingbirds
investigations and you
turn fleshy feathers to avoid being bothered by other hummingbirds. They tend to have bright blue heads and throats, but mate choice doesn't seem to drive these females' pretty plumage since males don't appear to prefer the blue females. Therefore, bright colors may help ladybirds blend in with the guys and as a result, feed for longer without harassment from other hummingbirds.
genetically he was pretty smart. Yeah, he took over a country at 23, and even though he was sort of like it was like an inheritance,
Female hummingbirds don't flashy feathers to avoid being bothered by other hummingbirds. They tend to have bright blue heads and throats, but mate choice doesn't seem to drive these females' pretty plumage since males don't appear to prefer the blue females. Therefore, bright colors may help ladybirds blend in with the guys and as a result feed for longer without harassment from other hummingbirds.
or had Obama been able to stay, or had crooked Hillary Clinton become president,
The solid waste management issue is the biggest challenge to the authority of both small and large cities in developing countries. This is mainly due to the increasing generation of such solid waste and the burden posed on the municipal budget in addition to the high cost. The solid waste management is possible the lack of understanding over different factors that affect the entire handling system.
button on my desk, and it's got very big power. And I said, no, no, I have a much bigger button than you do, and my button works. And we went through so
How'd you guys
much.
squash that? Because Little Rocket Man, that's a big church.
So
How
we
did you
went
like get
through.
past that?
I said, did you ever hear of the song Rocket Man when I was with him? I said, no, no,
The solid waste management issue is the biggest challenge to the authorities of both small and large cities in developing countries. This is mainly due to the increasing generation of such solid waste and the burden posed on the municipal budget. In addition to the high cost, the solid waste management is associated with lack of understanding over different factors that affect the entire handling system.
There may be some disruption to our services over the next few weeks.
he's a very smart guy.
There may be some disruption in our services over the next week.
The other day I was talking with Tucker about President Xi of China.
We look forward to seeing you on your next visit to the library.
Almost 1.5.
We look forward to see you in the next visit to the library.
They're eating our lunch. And I said, no, no. He said, the top of his game.
We offer a wide range of internship opportunities for students.
Not at the top of his game. He never was, to be honest.
We offer a wide range of internships for the students.
Surrounding him who are vicious and ruthless, the same people that take you down because of,
The integrated learning program aims at enriching students' learning experiences.
The integrated learning program refers the integrated students.
and I said, we don't have free speech. That's an incredible form of not having free speech. They
There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the meeting.
That's
There will be the opportunity to ask a question at the end of the medium.
country has never been more unified in the sense that they have to have change. I'll tell you
Drinking and driving is one of the most common causes of traffic accidents.
because I stick up for the people. If I didn't stick up
Drinking and driving are most causing everyone at accidents.
this election coming up is going to be incredible. And I will say
The family has sold most of its shares and will lose control of the company.
politics in this country. I think
The family has most of the share and lose the control of the company.
the win of 2024 will be much, much bigger than if it was a tradition.
She is a social scientist with a background in urban design and planning.
She is a social scientist and the background of urban sciences and studies.
Yeah, really fading fast. I mean, it's fading very, very quickly. Yeah, we got
Open access means making research publications freely available online.
Open access makes publication freely access online.
he was running
The professor regards this research as fundamental to our environment.
The professor regards this research as fundamental to the environment.
The lecture gives information about common career paths for economics students.
The lecture gives information about the common career paths of the students.
He went like a rocket. I should call him Rocket Man, but now he's Rocket Man that's crashing. His goals are terrible. I'm leading him in every state. And,
This is a car spare part financial analysis graph. Sales is showing from the blue color, purchase is showing from the gray color, snap is showing from the orange color.
he didn't do a great job. If you take a look at the numbers, he's very high on crime.
This is the car spare parts financial analysis graph. The sales is showing from the blue color and purchase is showing from the gray color and expenses are showing from the orange color. In 2020, the sales, purchase and expenses are equally divided into $40,000 to $120,000 and $200,000. And in 2025 to 2020, this graph is showing car spare parts financial analysis.
Because what they pretended to be. With all of that being said, when you help somebody, I believe in loyalty. You just don't do what he did. Now he's out campaigning. I assume he's going to run, but I think the numbers are so bad now. A lot of people are assuming that he won't run. And would you consider him to be your enemy? I don't see it. I don't see it. We have a lot of great people.
This bar graph is showing the Ligolus marks versus class average. The Ligolus is showing from the red color and class average showing from the light red color. There is the subject called art, English, math and science, and there will be the total of 100 marks between 70 to 100. The Ligos marks in art is 82 as compared to class average is 85. In English they got 85 as class average has come in 92. In math they got the higher marks with the class average and they got 93 and class average is 83. And science they got the 85 and class average is 83.
Sitting with you, not saying to hurry up, because you're the nut boys. That's pretty good.
You're the best.
Rocket Man, how you love that song. People don't know this, but you have the Spotify song, don't you? The song on Spotify, right?
It's Spotify.
You hit the billboard chart.
You just top the charts.
So we did and The Apprentice, it went to #1. It did great in real estate, it did great in politics. The one thing I haven't done, I always wanted to be Elvis Presley. I had hit #1.
This is the picture of Zoom meeting doing the colleagues of offices where the one person is on the laptop and talking about the meetings with a happy mood. There are 4 persons in which 2 are ladies and 2 are men, and there will be also the green plant is sitting on the table and the laptop with the book, and the lady is talking to these 4 persons and telling their performances, how well she done in their office. And the 4 person is one is wearing blue shirt and the other one is wearing blue tie and white shirt. The other lady is wearing a orange t-shirt.
The comic move is to guide us to a benevolent conception of people, and hence parts of ourselves. Comedy also does a great job at reducing power imbalances. It's hugely reassuring to see the powerful laughing at themselves. Finding oneself comical is a token of maturity. It means being able to see one's faults without being too defensive about them. Humour often provides a mechanism whereby the powerless, or at least the less powerful, can give constructive but pointed feedback to the powerful. Monty Python was particularly focused on this task. The Philosopher's Football match mocks the great figures of intellectual history. It's funny because we've been intimidated so deeply in the past by intellectual bullies who made us feel small with their reading of Wittgenstein or Schopenhauer. And now they're shown as being completely rubbish at football and yet seriously involved in the game. Comedy isn't just a bit of fun. The comic perspective is a central need of a society. It enables us to cope much better with our own follies and disappointments, our troubles around work and love, and our difficulties enduring ourselves. Comedy is waiting to be reframed as a central tool in a better society.
It was
In this lecture, they are talking about the comedy, that how is the comedy is very essential for the audience. In comedy, you can stress your workload, and by playing sports, you can also workload your stress. And by comedy, you can complete your part in the fun
Where can you borrow or read books at university?
library,
Where do people go to watch films for entertainment?
cinema,
If you have tried everything to help your
What
back
is the piece of special flat glass that can reflect images?
geometrically designed to fit a human.
It's my first time doing
concave mirror,
What do we call a person who decides how a criminal should be punished in a court?
judge,
What do we call a scientist who specializes in the stars and planets?
astronomer,
When you don't understand the meaning of a word, what kind of book would you look up in?
dictionary,
It's fine for me. I have warm up. I'm warm. It's a deadlift, yeah? We have one technique. I look sky going to do it like this. So, yeah,
solution has extremely green, breach of good, या PTE, your right getting the breach of good. और ये इस बंदे का वैसे
Excuse me. Excuse me. Hey,
yeah. No, tomorrow is Sunday. I'm not working tomorrow. No, and even the ticket agent is also not working tomorrow. Monday, Monday. I'll check what are the options and then I'll call you. Okay.
Ronaldo could get deported from Saudi Arabia, and it's not because of his WWE behaviour on the pitch, but after what he did after the game. He touched his genital, mocking AI halal fans, and this kind of behaviour is punished by law, especially in the month of Ramadan. A player before him did the same thing and got deported. Do you think this is the end? Ronaldo could get एकदम शिला जीत के माफी अरे आइटम इतनी जगह जगह तो शिला जीत की कोई जरूरत नहीं पड़ती क्या तुम्हारी माँ खूबसूरत है अभी भी एकदम आग लगती है भाभी
वैसे आज भी लोग मेरी खूबसूरती की तारीफ करते हैं
माँ का माँ ज्यादा लगती है कोई सीता भाभी है और वो तो साक्षात सीता भाभी और अगर तुम्हारी माँ ना होती तो मैं ठीक भाभी के साथ सिर्फ सीढ़ी खेल रहा होता लेकिन नहीं ये छूट गई
There are two main ways that rain forms, and while we're really good at forecasting one kind, we're really bad at predicting the other. The first kind, which makes up about 40% of the rain we experience, is the long-lasting gray skies all day kind of rain. This comes from giant air masses called fronts, which move around the planet. When a cold one runs into a warm one, the warm one, which is less dense, gets lifted up. As it rises, it quickly cools off, which causes tons of water vapor in it to condense right where the two air masses meet, and then fall as rain, or snow, or sleet. Since the fronts themselves are large and easy to track with radar systems, not only can meteorologists tell pretty much exactly where this type of rain will fall, they can also measure the size and temperature of the two air masses and use that to accurately predict how intense the rain will be and how long it will last. But the majority of rain we experience comes from a process called convection. This type of rain happens when heat from the ground warms up a small mass of air, which then rises and cools, causing the water vapor in it to condense and fall to the ground. That process of rising, cooling, and condensing is very similar to what happens with frontal rain. But because convective rain is triggered by heat from a small patch of ground, rather than the temperature difference between two large masses of air, it's much more complicated. It's hard to know how warm various parts of the ground will be at a particular time, whether that heat will be enough to lift a particular mass of air to a particular height, how much water vapor that particular mass of air holds, and how long that particular mass of air will stay over that particular patch of warm ground.
The idea that a dog could seek help from a human does have a solid basis in science. In what's known as the unsolvable task experiment, a dog first learns how to open a puzzle box with a tasty treat inside. The puzzle is then secretly switched for another that's impossible to solve. After becoming frustrated, dogs shift their attention away from the puzzle and onto a nearby human, then back to the puzzle. The dog attempts to shift the human's attention to the puzzle as a request for help. Human infants do the same thing. Such efforts are called referential communication. So if dogs behave this way, you might expect the same from their close relatives, wolves. But when researchers tested wolves raised by humans, the animals just kept trying to solve the puzzle, never seeking help. Since the dogs and wolves were all raised the same way and by the same people, domestication must be responsible for the behavior.
I'd recommend that you all try to get hold of English in the Southern Hemisphere by Nolan and Watts, as this provides an excellent overview of the topics that we're going to be covering in this module. It's really our primary text. It has particularly strong sections on the history of English in Australia and New Zealand, examining in some depth how the language has developed in these countries. The sections on phonology and on vocabulary will be invaluable when you're doing the written assignment, which I'm going to be telling you about in a moment once I've given you the details of a couple of other essential references.
To be honest, the biggest problem for most undergraduate students in terms of academic writing is not only adapting to a far more structured and formal style, but also learning how to ascertain the difference between important, valid information and unnecessary or even irrelevant material. In my experience, I would say it takes students their first year, if not longer, to appreciate what is required and to start to implement those requirements in their writing. What they really should be doing, if they are struggling with written assignments, is to seek help from the excellent support services which are available at the university.
It isn't necessary to have a specialized knowledge of, say, the intricacies of counterpoint, or even to be able to read music to understand it. Usually getting the point of a piece of music, its emotional and dramatic impact, is immediate or simply requires you to become more familiar with it. Of course, prolonged study of music and its composition, as in any other field, will increase your understanding, but not necessarily your enjoyment. Now, I realize that it can require a good deal of willingness on our part to risk new sensations, and there is a lot of music that will seem unfamiliar and alien to you on a first hearing.
I actually think we oftentimes confuse skills and skills development with education. And education is actually designed to actually encourage the individual to consider questions they hadn't considered before, to actually be able to assemble a vast array of information and then to synthesize that information and to come up with perhaps what one would think of as new answers. It's not about learning the most recent technique. And the challenge is that if you only talk about skills development, the way knowledge is produced these days, a generation is 18 months. And so that means by the time you've actually finished school, oftentimes you're already behind the curve and some of that information is obsolete. If you're really truly educated, you then learn and you know how to go about pursuing the new acquisition of information. And that information that you can then synthesize and apply to what you already know means then that you're not behind the curve, you're keeping pace with the change that's always occurring in both in technology and other aspects of American life.
If you have a dog, you may have noticed that sometimes it seems to be smiling. But of course we know that dogs don't really smile. That's just how dog mouths appear sometimes, right? Perhaps, but according to neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp of Bowling Green State University, some animals do laugh. When chimps play, Panksepp notes, they make panting sounds that could be a form of laughter. Even rats have a way of laughing, by chirping when they're playing with each other or being tickled by humans. But if animals do in fact laugh, what are they laughing at? Scientists have long known that for many animals, life isn't all about hunting, foraging, fighting, and sleeping. Young animals also play a lot, which suggests that animal laughter is related to playful joy.
Imagine that you're in charge of a company and hiring for a new position. Here are the candidates. Without thinking about it too much, which one would you choose? My guess is that you went for one of those in the middle and avoided the people on the ends. Why? Because research shows that we tend to unconsciously think those towards the middle of the group are more important. Some of the work has examined the TV quiz show The Weakest Link, in which contestants stand in a semicircle and vote one another off. Those standing towards the middle of the semicircle won the game on average 45% of the time, whilst those standing on one of the ends won just 10% of the time. So if you want to make a good impression during a meeting, make certain you sit
Recent studies do suggest that some of your personality is related to your genetics, but there are plenty of other factors too. Many of these studies break down personality using the 5-factor model, or the Big Five. It puts personality traits into 5 general categories: extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness to experience, and neuroticism. That last one is also sometimes called emotional stability. The degree to which each of these traits shows up in your personality is pretty stable for the most part, but it does change throughout your life. For example, as people age, studies suggest that they tend to become more conscientious, and life events like getting married have been shown to increase emotional stability. So sure, your personality can
Leisure travel was, in a sense, a British invention. This was mainly due to economic and social factors. Britain was the first country to become fully industrialised, and industrial society offered growing numbers of people time for leisure. This, coupled with improvements in transport, especially the railways, meant that large numbers of people could get to holiday resorts in a very short time. Modern mass tourism, of a sort we can easily recognise today, began in 1841, when Thomas Cook organised the first package tour, in which everything was included in the cost: travel, hotel, and entertainment. To cater for the large numbers of new holidaymakers, holiday camps were established, both on the coast and in the countryside, and they became immensely popular. Their popularity declined, however, with the rise of cheap overseas tours, which gave many people their first opportunity to travel abroad.
In the 19th century, few people could afford to travel abroad. It was expensive, and there weren't the mass transport systems that we have today. So curiosity about foreign lands had to be satisfied through books and drawings. With the advent of photography, a whole new dimension of reality became available. Publishers were not slow to realize that here was a large new market of people hungry for travel photography, and they soon had photographers out shooting the best-known European cities, as well as more exotic places further away. People bought the pictures by the millions, and magic lantern shows were presented in schools and lecture halls. Most popular of all, however, was the stereoscopic picture, which presented three-dimensional views and was considered a marvel of Victorian technology.
Stem cells are the body's master cells, the raw material from which we are built. Unlike normal body cells, they can reproduce an indefinite number of times and, when manipulated in the right way, can turn themselves into any type of cell in the body. The most versatile stem cells are those found in the embryo at just a few days old. This ball of a few dozen stem cells eventually goes on to form everything that makes up a person. In 1998, James Thomson announced that he had isolated human embryonic stem cells in the laboratory. At last, these powerful cells were within the grasp of scientists to experiment with, understand, and develop into fixes for the things that go wrong.
The discussion of a new university policy has been discouraged. Somehow, she earned a university degree despite many difficulties. Teachers have to be trained appropriately before they become qualified. Our friendly staff provide emotional support whenever it is needed.